Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping straight into, well, a pretty dense stack of sources. They all center on this really powerful, enduring metaphor in spiritual history, the choice between two paths in life.
That's right. And these sources, they draw very clearly from foundational biblical narratives. They lay out one path as, wide and easy, but it leads to destruction, and the other, narrow, challenging, but it leads to true eternal life.
Exactly. And our mission today isn't just to state that, is it? We want to understand why. Why is this narrow path supposedly necessary? And maybe more importantly, what do the sources actually define as the biggest threat we face on this journey?
That's the core question. And to get there, we kind of have to throw out the simple idea that the threat is just ignorance. It doesn't quite work that way. The really crucial insight right at the start is this. The danger often comes, perhaps ironically, not from those who know nothing, but from those who do have knowledge of God's plan, but then consciously choose to, reject it or twist it for their own gain.
That really ramps up the difficulty of the choice, doesn't it? It means the wide road isn't just for people who haven't heard. It's actually paved by deliberate disobedience, an internal kind of betrayal. Okay, so let's trace that pattern. Where does this knowledge without obedience thing first really show up in the sources you looked at?
Oh, it's woven throughout, right from the beginning. It confirms that just knowing the truth intellectually, it's clearly not enough. It doesn't guarantee faithfulness. It starts way back, earliest moments of creation, and just keeps popping up.
Like Eve.
Exactly. Eve in the Garden of Eden, she knew God's command couldn't be clear, do not eat from that specific tree. But what happened? She listened to the serpent, didn't she? Let that doubt in. She basically swapped God's clear word for her own curiosity, that desire for forbidden knowledge. Her failure wasn't ignorance, no way. It was an active, conscious undermining of a known truth.
And right after that, you get Cain. Driven by something similar, right? A known requirement for faithful worship.
Precisely. Cain knew God. He knew sacrifice was part of the deal. But when his offering wasn't accepted like Abel's was, what did he choose? Resentment. Envy. Instead of maybe looking inward or trying to fix things, he killed his brother. His failure was letting that jealousy, fueled by his own ego maybe, his rejected understanding, letting it push him onto the wide path. Violence. Destruction. So the pattern gets set early. The wide path is often entered by replacing God's known law with powerful human emotions, doubt, envy, anger.
Yeah, and this is where the historical examples get really, really interesting, especially when you look at powerful figures, people who absolutely should have known better. You see this internal betrayal continue with people who are, like, right next to the source of divine authority.
Absolutely.
Think about Absalom, King David's son. He grew up in the palace, knew the laws, the prophets, all the responsibilities of leadership. Yet he went for ambition, self-glorification, led a huge rebellion against his own father. His knowledge just made his actions, more calculated, more damaging, you could argue.
And then you shift to Herod, a political figure, right there on the edge of the Messianic age. The sources say he was deeply troubled by the news of a new king's birth. What does that tell you? It tells you he knew the prophecies. He understood the implications of the star, the wise men. He got it. But instead of submitting, he reacted out of fear, political survival, self-preservation, and chose that path of extreme, calculated violence, murdering innocent kids.
What's striking is how the sources seem to treat the failures of these figures, Eve, Cain, Absalom, Herod, as much more significant because of what they knew. It's not painted as just a mistake or a lapse in judgment. It feels like a deliberate, informed choice, prioritizing self or fear or envy over the truth they already had.
And that just hammers home the essential point, doesn't it? When we talk about the wide path, we're not just talking about, obvious external temptations. We're talking about that internal foundation of self-will that lets someone justify rejecting obedience, even when they know better. And that's incredibly dangerous because it uses logic, rationalization, self-justification to pave the way to destruction.
Okay, so if this pattern of internal failure, this knowledge without obedience, leads to such betrayal and violence, even among those closest to God's will, let's look at the ultimate confrontation, the highest possible stakes. How did this wide path present itself to the very source of the narrow path? I mean, the temptation of Jesus in the wilderness, Matthew 4, right? The sources really highlight this.
Yes, absolutely. And this is like a perfect blueprint for understanding the wide path. It's crucial. See, the devil wasn't trying to lure Jesus into some crude, obvious sin. Not really. He was offering clever shortcuts, calculated ways to achieve his mission without the struggle. That's the very definition of the wide road. It's all about getting to a good goal, maybe, but through means that are unrighteous, self-serving, or just instant.
Let's break down those three specific offers, because they really do reflect the kinds of promises the wide road makes even today in modern life.
Okay, first one. Turn stones into bread. This is the temptation of immediate need, prioritizing physical comfort, instant gratification, over spiritual reliance, patient trust, endurance. The wide path whispers, just fix your hunger now, it's easy.
Simple survival, almost.
Almost. Then the second one, prove you're divine by jumping off the temple roof. That's the ultimate shortcut to legitimacy, isn't it? Validation, spectacle. Why bother with years of quiet teaching, service, struggle, when you can grab everyone's attention right now with something spectacular? This is the path of ego, demanding God prove himself to you on your terms instead of you humbly submitting to his way, his timing.
Yeah, demanding proof. And the third temptation, offering all the world's kingdoms, power, control, just bow down once, that's maybe the most seductive. Trading long-term faithfulness for immediate global dominance. It plays right into the ego's hunger for authority, tangible, right now power.
Exactly. And if you dig into the devil's motivation, according to these sources, it's identified as deep envy. Envy of humanity's status as children of God. The implication for us, for you listening, is actually quite chilling. The wide path looks attractive, it offers these temporary wins, but its underlying aim is to pull you down, to reduce you from a child of God, living for something eternal, into just a slave of immediate worldly wants, basically sabotaging God's whole plan for redemption.
So if the wide path isn't just physical obstacles, what's it actually made of? It must be built from psychological stuff, spiritual appeals.
It's constructed almost entirely out of convenience and justification. That's its structure. The wide path looks good because it offers superficial ease, instant fixes. Deceptive wealth could be money, could be social status, influence, positions that stroke the ego, and maybe most insidiously, just constant distraction, things that lead to forgetting who you are, forgetting your purpose, a gradual spiritual numbing. It's the path that seems to require no heavy lifting, no real self-denial. And yeah, to someone just looking on, it can definitely look like success.
Okay, that brings us right to the stark contrast the source material makes so explicit. Quoting Jesus directly in Matthew 7:13. Enter through the narrow gate. And it's not framed as like a gentle suggestion. It sounds like a command based on where each path ultimately leads.
The contrast is meant to be jarring, intentional. The wide path, easy to find, loads of people on it. Its end is destruction, basically, a wasted life, a missed purpose. The narrow path, difficult. It requires struggle, conscious effort, saying no to yourself sometimes, but it guarantees true life. Enduring peace.
This definitely raises a big question, though, especially if you're hearing this for the first time, maybe. Why? Why would the divine plan involve such a hard choice? If God is loving, why not just make one easy path, clearly marked for everyone?
And that's the absolute core theological tension the sources grapple with. It's central. The existence of two roads isn't some cosmic trick. It's actually presented as proof of radical free will. The theological answer they give relates directly to the nature of true love, kasisaitai, as some sources put it. Think about it. Forced obedience. Automatic, effortless affection. That's not the kind of relationship God actually desires with us.
So the choice itself is what matters.
Precisely. If the easy, wide road didn't exist, our choosing the other way wouldn't mean much, would it? Our commitment would be automatic, compulsory. The very fact that the narrow path demands struggle, effort. That's what validates the sincerity of the choice. It proves the genuineness of our love, our obedience. So the struggle itself isn't the goal, not at all, but it's the unavoidable result of choosing alignment with God when the easier, more convenient option is always right there.
Okay, so if the struggle proves the choice is real, what does this look like today in our lives? This can't just be an ancient theological concept. The sources really seem to insist this is a daily tension playing out right now.
Oh, absolutely. It's not abstract at all. This tension plays out in almost every decision we make, big or small, where we have to choose between short-term gain or comfort and long-term character or purpose. The wide path today often looks like, well, like efficiency maybe, networking shortcuts, just going along with the loudest cultural trends because it brings acceptance.
Can you give us some really concrete examples of that tension now? Where does the wide path kind of disguise itself as just common sense?
Sure. Take financial integrity, for instance. The wide path might look like taking a tiny ethical shortcut at work. Maybe fudging some numbers slightly, something that guarantees a promotion or closes a deal. Or maybe engaging in slightly deceptive business practices because, hey, everyone else is doing it. The narrow path. That demands quiet, painstaking integrity. even when it costs you. Costs you money, maybe costs you career advancement. It means operating as if God is watching, even when your boss isn't or the regulator isn't looking.
Right. That's tough.
Or think about the pull for validation, approval. The wide path is chasing those fleeting likes on social media, right? Crafting a perfect online persona that gets instant attention, instant affirmation. Prioritizing how things look over how they are. The narrow path. That's choosing the disciplined, often unseen, quiet work of developing a genuine skill or real character. Stuff that might never get wide recognition or an instant reward. It's essentially trading that quick dopamine hit of online applause for the slow burn satisfaction of knowing you're building something real, something aligned with a deeper purpose.
So the narrow path is fundamentally about delaying gratification and holding yourself to an internal standard even when the external world isn't clapping. It's easy to think of the wide path as something huge and disastrous, like Cain killing Abel. But what you're describing sounds like the wide path is often built with tiny, convenient choices, little compromises.
That's exactly the danger. That's why it's so seductive. The wide path isn't usually paved with outright malice. It's paved with convenience, with justification, with self-comfort. It's the path that constantly tells you, relax, you deserve this little break. The rules don't really apply to you in this situation. The narrow path, on the other hand, requires constant vigilance, self-assessment, and that deliberate, often quite painful choice to sacrifice what feels good right now for what aligns with God's ultimate long-term plan.
The sources then present this as a kind of eternal tension, a constant pull between the comfortable, worldly lure of the wide road and that deliberate call to the narrow path. And the final conclusion you pull from the source is pretty demanding, isn't it?
It is, yeah. The conclusion is quite straightforward, actually. True life, that promised destination, that peace, it's not the default setting, it's not automatic, it's presented as the reward for continuous conscious choice. Only those who actively choose and then walk the narrow path, following the example set by Christ, especially in that wilderness temptation, only they will reach that promised destination. The journey itself, the choosing, defines the commitment.
Wow. Okay, that was a serious deep dive. We've gone from those earliest examples of informed failure people who knew the truth but chose rebellion, all the way through that ultimate showdown in the wilderness.
Yeah.
Right down to the why behind free will and what this means for the practical, everyday choices we make. It really boils down to where we decide to put our feet right now.
Exactly. And as we wrap up, maybe we can leave you, the listener, with a final thought, something provocative that builds on this tension we've been exploring. The sources are really clear. The wide path is tempting precisely because it solves immediate problems. It offers immediate comfort. So ask yourself this. Is that immediate, temporary comfort of the wide path, is it enough for you? Even knowing the risk, the potential loss of spiritual direction, of depth. Or are you prepared to actually step onto the narrow path, demanding as it is, to aim for what these sources call true life? And maybe even more practically, what's the smallest, most convenient choice you might need to reject today, right now, in favor of that more difficult commitment, just to start walking or continue walking that narrow path?